Good morning, thank you. I'm going to try to use what has been said before to center my reflection on things that weren't explicitly mentioned. So our panel is defined by space, a space that is in fact a territory, Central Europe, which was never defined. And by double timeliness, that is at the same time a date, 1989, and a cycle, 25 years, which should be meaningful. Therefore, ring structure should meet linearity, which I doubt, that's another thing. So 1989 should be a sequence slot and a birth deserving an anniversary. But why should historians walk along the path of national tales in such a case? What is at stake when doing so? Maybe Hungary is a good playground, as in 1914, the anniversary doesn't seem to have met any success, notably on the 23rd of October, the day in 89 the Constitution changed. But this year, if we look at Hungarian TV and watch the press, it was mostly about corruption and various internet tax protests. So we have to switch back to June the 16th and take a look at a magnificent program on Duna TV, one of the official television, the almost only official televisions now in Hungary. And what has been said is quite clear. At first, what is striking when you look at this program, and it's one of the examples, is that the text says, when it's said by the lady introducing the program, Magyar Szabadság és Függetlenség napja. That is, Hungarian Freedom and Independence Day. The text on the screen says only Hungarian Independence Day. Freedom is out. And basically, this little twist is very significant. During this program, the main interviewee, the only one, was Maria Schmidt. So for those who don't know her, please Google her out. It's really impressive. The main points which were made were the following. First, Viktor Orbán was the main actor in 1989. That was the first point. Then the comparison with Nazi crimes, no Nuremberg trial, but similar crimes. And images of the Visegrad head of states at a meeting on that day, referring to Orbán. Second, announcements. Mr. Gauck and Mr. Ader, both President of the Republic, announced a list of victims of communists in a big data bank. And immediately after, it was announced that in Washington, there would no longer only be the Museum for the Holocaust, but also a museum for the victims of communism. And immediately after that, the last point was that the Hungarian regime has been producing a movie called Common Success, trying to present 1989 as the common success of all the Hungarians, as if in 1981 the people were united, which is quite singular because this smooth vision of what happened in 1989 doesn't correspond to other parts of the official discourse, which is more black and white, and you have a lot of black elements. So, what is left to us today? What are the challenges we have to meet today in 2014? I would sample out 5 of them. The first, how to construct a viable space and time frame. Second, how to understand agency. Third, can we set aside the constraints of memory politics and concentrate on historical processes? And if yes, how? Fourth, is Holocaust the adequate reference to understand communists in Eastern Central Europe? So is the end of Holocaust to be compared to 1989 in Central Europe? And what can we learn from all these points as far as states are concerned as the major intellectual tool to understand the period as you have noticed today? So, I will just pick up my watch. How long do you have? Just tell me. 15 minutes? Fantastic. So, 3 major points. First, to construct the nation. Since 2011, you can read it, it will stay here a while. The new constitution has a first part, which is very strongly based on historical views, and which gives the official legitimacy for the nowadays constitutional structure of Hungary. When you'll read that, you'll figure out that the responsibility of Hungarians is none, it's void, starting at the 19th of March 1944, that is the Nazi invasion of the country, until 1990, that is encompassing 1989. That's why the question of the time frame is compulsory, at least when you look at Hungary, you have no choice. Second, it's not a constitution, it's a fundamental law. And why is that? Because the official wisdom of it all is that Hungary had some kind of eternal constitution, at least permanent, since, I would say, the 17th century. So, and please focus to one of the last sentences, which is about past, present, and future being linked in such a way you cannot step out of the national frame. So that was my first point. Second point, if we look at the 1989 comparison, then we have to remember certain things. 1989 in Hungary started with Imre Pozsgai saying that 1956 was a popular uprising. That was the end of the consensus inside the Communist Party. The visible end of it, it had ended much before, of course. Second, the structure of the round table in Hungary is very different from what it was in Poland, because you had the opposition round table working, and parallel, a bit later, you had the round table with the opposition, the third party, and the Communist Party. But I won't go into details, we can make that clear later. The typical feature of 1989 compared with 1956 is that at the end of the year, on October the 23rd, a new constitution was laid down and was in use. And this constitution was practically written by lawyers. Therefore, lawyers trained during the communism built a democratic constitution, which doesn't fit with the text you have here. If we look at this very nice image, just to end the second part on 1989, and if you focus on young Orban saving the country with his mustache and everything, there on the right, you will understand that the idea that was promoted, this is part of the new fundamental law. It's a special volume published with illustrations, images. And this is given to young couples getting married, for example, and it's an official book. It's better than a Bible. It's more official. Okay? So this image of 1956 has to be compared with this one. So I suppose people who don't know Hungary don't know what that is. This is communist power killing poor demonstrators in 2006 on the 23rd of October. In the same book. I'm not speaking about just a little image found on the internet. No, that's a very serious thing. So this just tells you that the historical continuity goes beyond 89, even in the official Fidesz tale. So I'll get you back to this text because I've seen you love it, so please keep reading it. My third point will be about what is it that is so striking in the official Fidesz tale. Fidesz is the party in government today, about 89. And first, as the last image you saw before is saying, repression went on, communists were not dead. Second, corruption in democracy was incredible. These were the arguments by Fidesz in 2010. 3, what is the agency? Gorbachev? Reagan? Only the Hungarian people? And let's not forget that very officially on the TV, Mrs. Schmidt said, freedom was not a present from abroad. It means that only the Hungarians, by miracle, on their own, saved freedom. At the same time, freedom was not mentioned, mostly in the talk. So, the fading of the public, which was mentioned this morning in 89, must be studied. And what do we see? The election with the most people participating was the vote on the 26th of November 89 on should we elect immediately or not a president of the Republic. Only 1/3 of non-participating. A bit later, for the first vote in April 1990, 65% of participating people. The second ballot, only 45%. So what does it mean? What are the link in between political participation, implication, involvement, and democracy? And what does it mean if you consider longer run phenomena? And that's a real question. Therefore, when we listen to the discourses related to 89 as very often grounded on the idea of natural paths, of authenticity, of biology, and communism being a disease, the national body suffering from communism and then setting free of it. These images are all very nice, but apparently are not so simple to use for a historian. So my conclusions are, first, the only time and space frame that should be used should be European, because the phenomena were pan-European, You have to take into account Helsinki. You have to take into account military control, partial disarmament. You have to take into account other issues, but anyway, it's not the country by itself which should be considered. And second, the time zone cannot be restricted to 89 unless you want just to build up a mythology. Second, agency. Agency connected to time and space. It means it's national, transnational, but not only politics, economics, military, and other features are to be taken into account. The mobilization or demobilization of people is not so simple to understand. And for example, the difference in between politics and aesthetics or entertainment are not so clear. A good example was on June the 16th this year, what did the government organize? A big concert, not a major political demonstration. Memory, politics, history, and justice. These are a very complex knot of fields. I would say that what Muriel proposed about the opposition of universal guilt and criminalization of communists. In the case of Hungary, few people mentioned universal guilt. Nevertheless, criminalization didn't go so easily. Illustration had much more limits than in here, but nowhere was one problem solved. For justice to work, you need trust. To have trust in justice, you need time. It's not a one-shot operation. And we get here to one of the major points. In Eastern Central Europe, states during the long 20th century, starting in 1905 with the Russian Revolution and getting almost to today, states were not able to secure their people, to give security. So the basic Weberian idea that it's normal that state control violence is not a valid clue to interpret, to give an interpretation of what happens here. And this has not been seriously met, and it's a real problem, according to me. Second, the Holocaust is not a fitting model to understand communism. And if it is because of the involvement of a lot of people whom historiography till the latest years didn't take into account and didn't consider to participate. Therefore, I think we are just starting to cope with 89, and we'll have a lot of work to do. Thank you so much for your kind attention.